I wasn't looking for love when I met her. That's what people say when they're guarding their hearts. But for me, it was just true. I was sitting on a park bench near the library downtown, a thick folder of client contracts beside me, watching a busker pluck out Landslide on a weathered guitar. I was tired. Not from work, from hoping, from trying. My last relationship had drained the color out of things, and I wasn't in any hurry to repaint. And then she sat beside me. No preamble. No awkward glance. Just dropped down with a coffee in hand, looked at the busker, and said, "He's playing it too fast. That song's supposed to hurt a little." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she said it like we already knew each other. Like there was an understanding, an ease I hadn't felt in years. Her name was Tessa. She wore a threadbare scarf in summer, had chipped nail polish, and a tiny crescent scar above her lip she said came from falling off a bicycle at 13. She made it easy. That's the only way I can explain it. No games. No pretenses. When I asked what she did, she said, "Right now, I'm figuring it out." And when I said I'd been through a rough breakup, she didn't lean in with questions. She just nodded like she understood heartbreak was more than gossip, that it was something you carried in your bones. The first few weeks were simple. We met on Tuesdays at the same bench. Talked about music, bad movies, good books. She told me she loved rainy days because they made the world feel smaller, closer. I told her I hated them because they made me think too much. That was the kind of honesty we shared, small confessions, offered up like gifts. By the end of the second month, I knew I was falling hard. I remember staring at my ceiling one night, wondering how someone could make the world feel safe just by existing in it. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't tell me to move on or toughen up. She just listened, really listened, and that was all I needed. One night, over dinner at her tiny apartment, the kind where the kitchen and living room were the same space, she looked at me and said, "I'm not like her." I didn't have to ask who she meant. My ex. The one who left me with more questions than closure. I don't play with hearts. If I say I'm here, I'm here. I remember that moment too clearly. The soft light of the overhead bulb. The way she tucked her knees up onto the couch. The smell of burnt tomato sauce lingering from a meal we'd ruined together. I looked at her and felt that flicker of something dangerous, hope. "I want to believe you," I said, my voice low. "I want to stop waiting for the other shoe." "Then don't," she said. "Don't wait. Just trust me." So I did. God help me, I did. That was the promise. Unspoken but carved into the space between us. She'd be different, and I'd believe in her. We were both liars, but not yet. Not then. In those early months, the lie was still sleeping. We moved in together after 5 months. It was fast, I know, but it felt like swimming with the current instead of against it. I gave her the master closet. She gave me the left side of the bed. We argued about toothpaste caps and movie choices and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. It didn't, she said, and I conceded just to see her smug little grin. But cracks don't start loud. They whisper. The first whisper came on a Thursday. She was late coming home. I didn't think much of it at first. Traffic, maybe, or errands. But when she walked through the door, she looked startled to see me. Like she'd forgotten I existed for a moment. She covered quickly, kissed my cheek, mumbled something about a coworker running late. But something in her eyes had shifted, like she was already somewhere else. I didn't push. I didn't ask. I trusted her. The second whisper was her phone. Not constantly, just occasionally. Late night buzzes she didn't check. Or did check, but turned the screen away as she typed. Again, I told myself it was nothing. I knew what it meant to be accused unfairly, and I refused to do that to her. Then came the weekends. One trip with her friends. Then another. Always last minute, always rushed. Once, she came back with a tan she didn't explain, wearing a new necklace I hadn't seen before. I asked where it came from. She said she bought it at a market. But the price tag was still in her suitcase. A boutique I knew she couldn't afford without help. Still, I kept quiet. I held on. Because she'd promised she was different. And I'd promised I'd believe her. What's the line? Fool me once, shame on you. One night, I woke to find her sitting on the balcony in the dark. No light, no phone. Just her silhouette, staring out at the city like she was searching for an escape. I joined her, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. She flinched. Just slightly, but enough. You okay? I asked. She hesitated, then smiled. That same crooked smile that used to make me feel invincible. Yeah, just thinking. About what? I wanted to ask, but I was scared of the answer. So I kissed her temple, said, I love you, and waited for the words back. They came, but slower than usual, colder, like she was borrowing them from someone else. And in that moment, I knew. I knew something had already cracked between us. That trust, the thing we swore on, had begun to rot from the inside. But I held on to it anyway, like trying to keep water in a cupped hand. Because if I let it go, what was left? Just silence. Just me. And the beginning of an ending I wasn't ready to see. The night I stopped lying to myself started like any other. She was humming in the kitchen, barefoot, spooning pasta into bowls. A bottle of red wine already half gone. I watched her from the hallway, how her hips swayed slightly with the rhythm of some silent song. And for a moment, I convinced myself we were okay again. That maybe the tension in the air was just from life, from routine, from stress. But then her phone lit up on the counter. It was instinct, not intention. I wasn't trying to snoop. But when something glows in the dark, your eyes find it. The message preview was brief. Just a name I didn't recognize, Logan, and a string of words that punched the air out of my chest. Still thinking about last weekend. That thing you whispered. She saw me looking. Her body stiffened, just enough to notice. Then she calmly walked over, turned the phone face down, and smiled like nothing had happened. Dinner's ready. I didn't eat. I couldn't. My mind played games, racing between explanations. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was a coworker. Maybe, and this was the worst lie of all, maybe I had misunderstood everything. But trust doesn't break with explosions. It breaks with paper cuts. And that message was a deep one. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat on the bathroom floor and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked like a man unraveling. Pale, tired, hollow in a way that sleep wouldn't fix. I pulled out my old notebook, the one I hadn't touched in over a year. It still smelled like her perfume, the bottle she stopped wearing months ago. I started writing. Just short things. Notes. Memories. Questions I was afraid to ask her. Who is Logan? When did you start lying? Did I miss the moment you stopped loving me? Were you ever telling the truth? I don't know how long I sat there. The sunrise came quietly. So did the resolve. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Not without knowing. I remembered what my brother once told me after his divorce. If you go to war without proof, you end up the villain in your own story. So I waited. I watched. And I listened. Over the next few weeks, the signs multiplied. She guarded her phone like it held state secrets. She showered more often after coming home. Once, I noticed a faint mark on her collarbone, too symmetrical to be accidental. She said it was from her purse strap. I said nothing. The lie was breathing now, growing. But still I stayed. Not out of weakness, but because I needed to understand how deep it went. I started keeping track. Times, patterns, names she mentioned, places she went. And one Saturday, when she said she was meeting her friend Bree for brunch, I followed. I parked across from the cafe, coffee in hand, and watched her walk in. Alone. 10 minutes later, a man joined her. Tall, sharp suit, confident in that careless kind of way. She touched his arm, laughed like I used to make her laugh, then leaned across the table, whispered something close to his ear, and his hand brushed her knee like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't move, didn't cry. I just sat there, still as stone, and felt something inside me shift. It wasn't rage. It wasn't sorrow. It was grief. Not for the betrayal, but for the version of me that still believed. That night, I didn't mention what I saw. I kissed her on the forehead and asked how brunch was. She lied without blinking. Great. Bree's thinking of moving to Chicago. I nodded. That's nice. And just like that, I became someone else. Someone quieter. Someone calculating. I pulled cash from our joint account. Not enough to raise alarms, just enough to begin preparing. I visited a lawyer. A kind woman named Dana who listened without judgment and asked only one question. Do you want to save this marriage or protect yourself from it? I said, I just want the truth. Dana smiled sadly. Then brace yourself. Truth rarely travels alone. I hired a private investigator the next day. He didn't promise miracles, just clarity. 3 days later, he called. I've got what you need. Want the details over the phone or in person? In person, I said, my voice shaking. I need to see it. We met in a small office above a florist's shop. He slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were photos, timestamps, hotel receipts. A paper trail of nights spent away. The man from the cafe, Logan Hartley, wasn't just a fling. He was someone she'd met during a marketing retreat 6 months ago, and the affair hadn't been brief. It was deliberate, ongoing, coordinated. She always checked in under his name, the PI said, but she paid in cash. Classic tactic. I nodded. I couldn't speak. He handed me a final photo. Tessa in Logan's arms, laughing, her head on his chest, like that was home now. That's when I knew. The woman who promised she was different wasn't different at all. And maybe I wasn't either, because I had stayed long after the cracks showed. I had lied to myself just as much as she had lied to me. My promise to believe her, that wasn't love. It was denial dressed in hope. That night, I stood at our bedroom door, watching her sleep. I whispered, I know. She didn't stir. I turned off the light and walked away, knowing something irreversible had just begun. I didn't leave right away. That's the part most people don't understand. After betrayal, they expect fire, rage, a slammed door, a suitcase by the curb. But I stayed. Not because I forgave her. Not because I was too weak to leave. I stayed because I needed to see who she would become when she thought she had fooled me. I needed to watch the lie live in full daylight. And I needed the ending to be mine. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the role. The good man. The trusting husband. I asked about her day. Cooked her favorite meals. Tucked the blanket around her legs when we watched movies on the couch. She smiled more. Relaxed. Even began humming again. She believed the lie we were both living, that she'd gotten away with it. Sometimes, I'd catch her checking her phone, that secret little grin playing on her lips. Sometimes, she'd leave for yoga in the evenings and return smelling like cologne I didn't wear. Every time she lied, I felt myself growing colder. Not angry. Not bitter. Just done. One night, we were brushing our teeth side by side. She bumped my hip with hers and said, I like us like this. Easy. You're my home. I looked at her in the mirror and almost laughed. But I didn't. I nodded and said, yeah, me too. The next morning, I packed a single bag. Nothing dramatic. Just the essentials. I left the rest. The books, the sweaters she bought me, the framed photos of us smiling in places that feel like distant planets now. I left a letter on the kitchen counter. For pages. Handwritten. No accusations, no venom. Just the truth. How I loved her. How I believed her. How I tried. How I saw everything. I ended it with this. You promised you were different. I promised I'd believe you. We both lied. Trust once broken never returns. I wish it did. I really do. Then I left. I didn't go far. Just enough to disappear. The first message came 2 hours later. Then 5 more. Then calls. Missed. Unanswered. I didn't block her. I just let the silence speak. For days, she tried. At first, casual. Hey, where'd you go? Then worried. Can we talk? Then frantic. Please, just answer. I'm sorry. And then came the confession. A voice message. Her voice shaking. I didn't mean to hurt you. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Logan was. I don't know. He was just different. But I see it now. I see what I ruined. I want to fix this. But trust isn't a table leg you glue back together. It's glass. Once shattered, you don't piece it back. You sweep it up and pray you don't step on the shards later. I moved in with a friend for a while. Quiet neighborhood. No questions. Just space. I got back into my work. Threw myself into rebuilding not a new life, just a life that wasn't tied to pretending. And then one day, months later, I saw her. I was walking out of a grocery store. She was across the street, standing by a car I didn't recognize. Her hair was shorter. She looked smaller, somehow. Less polished. She saw me. Froze. And for the first time, I didn't feel that sharp twist in my gut. Just a kind of soft ache, like the way an old wound reminds you of rain. She walked over, slowly. Hey. Hey. There was a long pause. She looked at the sidewalk. Then at me. You look good. Thanks, I said. You look different. She laughed once. Hollow. Yeah, I guess I am. We stood there, suspended in this strange, quiet moment. I wanted to say sorry, she said. Again. I know it's too late. I nodded. It is. But thank you. I thought I was different, she said. I really did. I know, I replied. I thought I could believe you. And I looked past her, at the horizon. The clouds shifting. A storm coming. I don't anymore. But I've learned to believe myself again. That's something. She wiped her eye. I never wanted to be the villain. You weren't the villain, I said. You were just a chapter one outgrew. She opened her mouth, then closed it. A beat. Then she turned and walked away. I watched her go, not with bitterness, not with longing, just with peace. We both lied, yes, but I learned that the truth, once found, doesn't have to scream. Sometimes it just sits quietly beside you, steady, patient, waiting for you to come home to yourself. And that's exactly where I am now.